We are diving today into something huge, a really high-stakes, multi-year negotiation. We're talking about an app billions use,
Billions, yeah.
and the negotiation. It's so politically charged. Think national security, tech sovereignty, and there was even a complete ban, bipartisan support, that's just been kicked down the road again and again.
We are absolutely talking about the future of TikTok.
Exactly.
Look, this is way more than just some corporate headache, right? Our sources are giving us the details on this framework that was just announced, a potential deal between Washington and Beijing.
A deal meant to fix years of friction over who owns it, who sees the data, all that. So our mission today, we take the White House line, they're sounding very confident, saying this deal is finalized, and we put it right next to what Beijing is saying publicly, which is, well, resistance.
A definite mismatch in tone, yeah.
We need to unpack the specifics. Who actually gets control? Who's watching the data? And crucially, why might Washington think it's basically done, signed, sealed, while it's still very much up in the air overseas?
It's a classic case study, really. Two major powers, and they seem to be defining success or what a deal even means very differently.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We've got specifics on the ownership structure they're proposing, the role for U.S. companies, oversight, and importantly, the background. The whole legislative fight that kind of forced this whole situation. Let's maybe start there.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Because to really get why this framework matters now, you absolutely have to understand the political heat that came before it. This wasn't some friendly market adjustment.
Not at all.
No, it was a reaction to some really deep fears from U.S. lawmakers. Bipartisan fears, too. Concerns that the platform could be used, politically.
Right, like spreading state-backed propaganda, or maybe even worse.
Harvesting sensitive user data, American user data. That was the big one.
And we need to stress, these weren't just abstract worries floating around Capitol Hill. The consequences got very real. Our sources confirm it. Congress, Republicans, and Democrats voted in 2024 to ban the app. Outright ban.
Wow. And that was upheld.
Yep. Upheld by the Supreme Court just this January. A full ban on a platform this big. I mean, that's a drastic step. It tells you exactly how seriously the U.S. security folks viewed the potential threat.
Okay, so a ban passed, Supreme Court signed off, but clearly it wasn't implemented. How did we get from that point to now talking about a negotiated framework?
Well, it turned into a bit of a political tightrope walk. Former President Trump, he kept delaying the ban's enforcement.
Pushing the deadline back.
Repeatedly, opting for negotiations, trying to force some kind of ownership change instead of just shutting it down. And that legal clock has been ticking.
Until now.
Until this past week, yeah. Officials announced they'd reached this framework. And that announcement prompted the president to suspend the ban again. The new deadline, December 16th.
So for you listening, maybe you use this app every day. Its availability, whether you can keep scrolling come December, it literally hangs on whether they can get signatures on this deal before that date.
It's that critical, yes.
Which brings us right to the deal itself, the framework. The White House, specifically Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, laid out the parts meant to fix those security issues we talked about. And they're claiming a pretty major shift in control.
They really are. And the claims, they're all about establishing American control points over the operations, the board, the data, everything happening stateside.
Okay.
Leavitt was very direct. The proposed deal means TikTok would be, quote, majority owned by Americans in the United States.
Okay, on paper, that sounds like it tackles the foreign ownership issue head on. But they didn't stop there, right? They talked about operational control, too. The board.
Yeah, exactly. They detailed majority control of the board for U.S. interests. The specifics. Americans would get 6 out of the 7 seats on TikTok's U.S. board.
6 out of 7. That's
Yeah.
strong majority.
It is. And that's a critical detail because majority board control, at least in theory, gives U.S. interests the legal power to set the budget, hire or fire the U.S. CEO, dictate domestic policy.
Basically build a wall around the U.S. operations. Keep Beijing out.
That's the intention, yes, to insulate it.
And the sources also mentioned a specific U.S. company being brought in for the data side.
Yes, another layer of oversight. The structure says Oracle, the U.S. tech giant, will be responsible for overseeing all of TikTok's data storage and security. Within the U.S., that is.
Oracle.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Politically, the sources specifically point out that Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, he's known as an ally of former President Trump.
Right, so that move,
Yeah.
it's not just a technical fix for data security.
Probably not just that. It seems like it's also about embedding the platform security within the, let's say, current U.S. political and corporate ecosystem, ensuring oversight aligns with this administration's priorities, presumably.
That does add a layer. And potential questions about how durable that setup is if, administrations change down the line. But okay, let's pivot to the absolute core of this whole thing. The tech that makes TikTok.
The algorithm.
The recommendation algorithm.
Right. If the ownership structure is the body, the algorithm, that's the brain. It's what makes it so addictive, so viral. But it's power.
Yeah.
It goes way beyond just funny videos or dances.
Okay, explain that for us. We hear algorithm constantly, but why is this one seen as such a strategic piece of tech? Why are both Washington and Beijing seemingly treating it like a national asset?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the TikTok algorithm, it's incredibly good at learning about you, your interests, what you like, what you don't, maybe even your political leanings, faster and maybe more effectively than almost anything else out there.
Scary good.
Scary good, yeah. Its real power is curating the reality you see on your phone with pinpoint precision. So if a foreign power controls that engine,
They could theoretically influence things.
subtly perhaps, push certain narratives, maybe suppress others, amplify divisions, essentially they could have a thumb on the scale of the American cultural conversation at massive scale.
Okay, now I really see why the U.S. security side views it as a strategic tool, not just some lines of code.
Precisely. It's about influence.
So back to the White House claims. They said they have control of this influence engine too.
That's what Leave It stated, yes. Quote, "The powerful recommendation algorithm will also be controlled by America as well."
A very strong claim, given everything you just said. But how? I mean, if the actual code, the engineers who built it and maintain it, if they're still largely based in China, what does controlled by America practically mean?
And that is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Our sources suggest this is still murky. The press secretary didn't offer any specifics on how this control would actually work.
No mechanism described.
None detailed publicly. If the core source code remains the intellectual property of ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, how do American board members, or even Oracle hosting the data, truly dictate what that algorithm recommends day to day, without access to modify or even properly review the code itself?
That seems like a huge gap.
It's the ultimate security objective for the White House, getting control of that recommendation engine. But the how remains the most sensitive and possibly unresolved part of this entire framework.
That disconnect, claiming it's finalized, claiming control, but lacking specifics on how that takes us right into the main friction point we need to discuss. The White House is projecting total confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Last Friday, the White House indicated the agreement was done, just needed signatures.
Finalized.
That's the word they used. And the press secretary doubled down. All of the details have already been agreed upon. Now we just need this deal to be signed. Very definitive language.
Okay, but then you look outside the U.S., and that story of a finalized deal hits some pretty significant turbulence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where's the pushback coming from?
It's coming squarely from Beijing, and it centers precisely on that asset we were just discussing, the algorithm.
They don't want to hand it over.
China has, according to the sources, publicly resisted handing over the algorithm. They see it as vital national IP, a symbol of their tech prowess. They might concede on board seats, maybe on where data is stored, but give up the core engine. That seems to be a red line.
And we saw this tension play out right after the leaders spoke, right? The call between President Trump and President Xi Jinping, the famous conflicting readouts. Maybe explain for the listener what a readout is and why the difference here matters so much.
Sure. A readout is basically the official summary a government puts out after a diplomatic meeting, like a phone call between leaders. Yeah. It's their version of what happened, what they want the public and other countries to know.
Okay.
And what's fascinating here, truly fascinating, is how completely different the readouts were after that Trump-Xi call regarding TikTok.
The Chinese readout was, well, it was notable for what it didn't say.
Exactly. China's official summary, zero mention of TikTok, none, nada, as if the topic wasn't even important enough to include in their official account of the call.
Just silence on the issue.
Complete silence. Meanwhile, President Trump posts on Truth Social, describes the call as very productive, and he specifically thanks Xi for what he calls TikTok approval.
Approval versus total silence. You can't get much further apart than that.
It's a stark contradiction. And it really highlights the tension, doesn't it? When national security imperatives clash with technological sovereignty, Washington thinks it has the structure locked down, maybe even the political nod.
Mm.
But Beijing's public stance, their refusal to even acknowledge the deal, especially regarding the algorithm, it strongly suggests that the most critical piece, the tech piece, is still very much contested. It's like agreeing to buy the car, but you haven't actually agreed on who gets the keys to start the engine.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Let's try to boil it down. What are the key takeaways from our sources today?
Right. Okay. Takeaway number one, this proposed deal. It's Washington's attempt to fix the security problem by putting Americans in charge on paper and in the boardroom.
Majority ownership, majority board seats, Oracle handling the data. Check.
Check. The political goal seems met there.
Yeah.
It looks American-controlled.
Okay, second takeaway.
The absolute heart of the matter, that powerful recommendation algorithm, the thing that shapes influence, that's still the main sticking point. The White House claims control.
But Beijing hasn't agreed to give it up. Publicly, at least.
Exactly. They're resisting handing over that technological sovereignty.
Got it. And the third point.
That disconnect, that tension, it plays out right up to the highest levels. You've got the confident, it's finalized message from the White House.
Undercut immediately by silence or conflicting messages from Beijing.
Right. Which confirms that, yeah, maybe the structure is outlined, but the core asset, the thing that gives the app its real power, that's still very much in dispute.
So this deep dive really shows us that in geopolitics, especially between the U.S. and China, a word like finalized, well, it can mean very different things depending on who you ask.
All about perspective, isn't it?
Which leads us to our final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We see the political confidence from one side, right? And clear international resistance on the other. If this whole deal really hinges on America getting meaningful control over that influence-shaping algorithm, and the other side, China, seems unwilling to actually transfer that control, then what's the real practical value of the majority ownership and board seats promised in this framework? That's the strategic puzzle still sitting there as we head towards that December 16th deadline.